So I'm a social policy academic, so my research connects to issues of care, welfare, children and young people, and specifically in relation to the prevention of harm and violence. So very specifically, my research is on the issue of child sexual exploitation, which is a particular form of child sexual abuse experienced by children and young people globally and also in the UK. My research very specifically has been looking at trying to make sense of what this issue is, trying to develop our understanding of it, and also think about how we can better respond. I've been doing research in this issue for about 15 years. So I first started it when I started my master's in social science research methods at Cardiff, and I wanted to do my dissertation project on something that would be useful. And having worked originally for Barnardo's Cymru, I contacted them and this was an area of research that they wanted support in, so that's what I chose to study. And then I went on to do a PhD in this, and I've been researching this as an academic member of staff for the last 10 years. The reason I started studying this was because I realised that it was an area that had been under-researched. So although it's not a new social issue, it's actually quite new to the area of safeguarding. So it was only recently introduced to children's safeguarding in 2009. And at that time, there was a lack of understanding about this issue within safeguarding areas of practice, and also associated areas such as policing and health. And also because having done research with children and young people, realising that the ways in which this had been defined within practice, it wasn't necessarily broad enough to be able to enable practitioners to respond in a way that was appropriate, and a way in which they would like to respond to young people, in a way that young people felt that they wanted to have support and care and help. So my research has been variously interested in looking at what the issue is, but also thinking about the ways in which we might respond, and how some responses are perhaps problematic for young people, and ways in which we can involve young people in their own care and in their own support, and in helping to make sense of their care and support needs, so that we can provide a better response to them. Because I've been interested in what the issue is and how we might think about how to respond, my research has involved children and young people with experiences of this abuse, along with social workers, foster carers, and a range of different multi-agency professionals who are all trying to work to respond to children and young people. So my work has originally been looking at what this issue is, but then there's also been work looking at how public policy and professional practice has been responding to the issue and developing that. So lots of different people have been involved in the research, and I've also been involved in doing ethnographic research with children and young people in residential care, and also looking at risk assessments and looking at the ways in which risk is defined within this issue, and an evaluation of outcomes in relation to specific risk assessments in relation to sexual exploitation. There's been a number of different impacts from my research. One of those is in relation to how we think about risk in relation to this issue. So previously, because it's quite difficult for practitioners to be able to see sexual exploitation, it's often something that's invisible, it's happening out of sight. In able to try to recognise that somebody might be at risk, there was a focus on young people's behaviours as the key area of risk. And what that meant was, in trying to respond to young people, what they were doing was we were focusing on young people's behaviours rather than addressing other areas in relation to their risks. So the problem tended to be understood as young people running away, for example, and instead, as a result of my research and other people's research as well, is looking at why might young people be running away and who are they running to. So thinking more broadly about risk, and then changing the ways that we think about risk in relation to assessment. So some of the changes in professional practice and public policy has been around looking at care and support needs and trying to address, say, perhaps a broader context of vulnerability for children and young people. So looking at what are their care needs, what are their support needs, and how can we put things in place to make sure that those are being responded to. And that then helps in terms of how we might support and respond to young people. So another area that my research has had an impact is in the importance of involving children and young people in a range of different aspects in relation to their care. So firstly, in trying to understand their needs and vulnerabilities and risks that, as they see it, so what's important to them, but also recognising the disempowering nature of care processes and how difficult it can be to be working through these kinds of systems and how that can also contribute to a context of vulnerability and risk. So my research has been about trying to keep young people at the centre in a positive way and make sure that we're responding to the very sorts of issues that make them vulnerable to the exploitation of other people. Another area that my research has had impact is in the Wales policy definition of sexual exploitation. So previously there was a real emphasis on the grooming of children and young people, but grooming is only one method of perpetration, and it meant that other young people were being missed. So my research has helped to direct the way in which we have defined sexual exploitation within policy that gives a kind of broader context for this, and then that's supported through lots of understanding of this issue so that people can read and make sense of what this issue is within policy, as well as how we might define it. People who have funded my work have been the Welsh Government and also the New South Wales Government. So I've been involved in a range of different research projects that are trying to directly inform and change practices within governmental responses to children and young people. If you wanted to find out more about my research, I have a website. It's called www.checkyourthinking.org, and in there is a whole range of different resources, and that's more broadly about how we might respond to the safeguarding needs of children and young people, addressing these sorts of areas around risk, around multi-agency practice in the context of young people going missing and running away, also thinking about how we might work relationally with young people. And also you could look at the website of Cardiff University, and on there is a link to a whole range of different publications, and most of my work is available to access for free.